Hello. Hello, hello. Coming on live. Excited to be here today and share some good wisdom with you for the next 3 days. Let's see, everything's coming online here. Make sure that I can see you and see the comments. And yes, as you're jumping on, if you would say hello, let me know you're here live. There, I can see the comments. Hello, Angelique. Hooray. mm. Well, I am really excited to be sharing 3 days of some beautiful wisdom with you women. In this time right now, there is a stirring of so many of us stirring in this sense of really bubbling into our rising, into our true authentic time. I think this time in what's going on around us with the world is really encouraging within our souls this urge, and almost like there's just no more time to wait any longer to really step in and be a leader in this world. And even if that's just a leader in our own lives, a leader for ourselves, leading ourselves into our best and most potent day-to-day living, as well as a leader in our families, perhaps a leader in your workplace or your experience of, what you're expressing in the world, your soul work. There is this stirring happening. There is this bubbling. And, at the same time that this is going on, there is also a lot going on around us, this unpredictability of change, this experience of being in a world that is really like nothing we've been in before. And with that comes overwhelm, comes, deeper levels of perhaps some fear and experience of feeling like I'm not sure how to manage all of this, because it's a lot that we're being asked to hold, especially as women. So at this time, it's like there's these two elements of ourselves that are meeting. This part of us that's like, okay, yes, it's time. I need to step into this woman that has been calling me. And at the same time, this feeling of like, oh my gosh, how I'm overwhelmed just with my day to day. How am I gonna, how do we make these two fit together? And that's what this time is asking of us. And in actuality, one feeds the other. So when we are stronger in our center, when we are more connected to our feminine power and our femininity, when we are anchored in these places, then we have more strength, we have more capability, we have more possibility, we have more ease in the ability for us to be with the world that's coming at us right now. So it really starts within ourselves, and it needs to be simple right now. It needs to be a place of really allowing what is already inside to come forth, and to make it simple so it doesn't feel like we're piling on more stuff to do in our lives that already feel probably pretty busy. So that is the intention here in these 3 days, is to really tap us into elements of our own inner power and strength as women, allowing them to be simple steps that we take, sharing simple tools to bring these steps into your life, and then the ability to move forward in life with coming more from this inner navigational system of confidence and calm and pleasure. All of things which are very important for us as women to feel like we're thriving. So, hello and welcome to this container. As you're jumping on, let me know you're here. If you're watching the replay, I'd love for you to let me know that you're watching, #replay, let me know you're here. And I'd love to know where you're from. If you are open to sharing in the comments where it is that you are watching from right now in the world. So, introducing myself, for those of you that may not know me yet, my name is Kadoma Columby, and I love supporting, encouraging, empowering, teaching women to anchor themselves, ourselves, because I am one of these women, back into our feminine power, reclaiming the places inside that have been lost, that we've overlooked. And that is my passion. That is my jam. And I am also the curator of this group, Wake Your Wild. Thank you for being in the group. It's creating sisterhood, and a place for our belonging is also a very large heart yearning for me in what I share for us at this time. So these 3 days that we're going to spend together, we are going to be going over 3 important keys to reclaiming and re-embodying our feminine. The 3 important keys are, first, remember, and that's what we'll be talking about today, remembering. The second one is reclaiming, and we'll be talking about that tomorrow, reclaiming. And the next one is reframing. So the reframing is life design. How do we put these things into life practice? So we remember, we reclaim, and then we reframe our lives from this new place. So this is what we'll be touching on in this 3 days that we're here together. Now, I've also been sharing, if you signed up through the email, you got a PDF of the image of the feminine power pillars at the round circle with the four directional elements to them. And I'm also going to be talking about these throughout these 3 days, because these are all of the elements that I have identified and that I work with in my work with women as key points for us to be thriving in our lives. These are, the lost arts of the feminine, the lost arts of the empowered and radiant woman. So I'm going to be going over that wheel as well. If you don't have it from the email, I'm going to see if I can real quick just drop the picture into our live real quick. So I'll drop it into the comment thread real quick. So excuse me for a moment. So you can pull it up. Oh, I guess I can't do a photo comment. Oh well, can't do it that way. Well, I will be going over each one of them. So it's basically like a medicine wheel, if you're familiar with that. And each one of these, as I said, is this element of the feminine that is a part of ourselves that already exists within us, that when we are tapping into this place within, that we are placing ourselves into the feminine wisdom that we carry already within ourselves. These are elements to our thriving. So I wanted to open today with a little bit of a poem and opening up the day of remembering. So remembering is a return to ourselves. It's a return to everything that we are in essence. The woman that is underneath all that we have been taught and trained and shaped by to be civilized in this more male-dominated, mind-driven culture. For thousands of years, women have been, brought into the state of oppression and slowly shrunken in these very important elements of who we are. As we are, taught to be quiet, as we were told we're too much when we're feeling, as we were, we've been sexually shamed so much for, being in a space of claiming our sensuality. We have been shamed for our menstrual cycles. We have been made to be small for a long time. We're now, fortunately, in a time in history when we are awakening as women, that we are rising up out of all of that and unveiling and taking off all these layers to actually find out who are we inside without all of these things that we've been placed upon us. Who is this wild one within me that exists underneath? So that is a big part of our remembering, is going in and delayering all of these things so that we can feel into who we are, really, who we are, each one of us unique. So this is a poem that I wrote that I would want to share to open up this remembering. Our bodies as sovereign, our bodies as sacred, our wisdom, our strength, our power, remembering our ground, this potent and profound place that is uniquely feminine. Remembering, we travel in spirals. We are curvy by nature, beautifully inconsistent. We ebb and flow. We move through cycles and seasons. This is a part of our wisdom. For so long, we have been stuffed into a structure we do not fit. The linear, the box, the square, where we have been expected to be something that we are not. It is time for us to remember our unique embodied wisdom of the feminine. And here we are to remember together. So taking a moment just to lay your hand on your heart, perhaps one hand on your belly as well, and just take a couple breaths into those words, into what I'm saying, starting to feel in your body how this is echoing out for you, how this is feeling in your body. Taking a breath or two to tap into that essence that is you underneath. Perhaps she's been buried for a long time, and her voice is just a whisper. Perhaps she is crashing and dancing through your life right now and making herself so known that it's no longer an option to ignore her and her desire to come forth into your life. Hmm. This beautiful one underneath that is truly you. Hmm. Welcome. I see you. Remembering. So the feminine power pillars that I'm going to talk a bit about today and just describe what they are so that when you do print this out or have this image, that you know what they are. And if you have the image printed, this is a great time to take notes. What may come forth for you as I talk about each one of these elements of our true ground as women. So the top part of the image is the words womb awake and cycle syncing. I'm going to begin with cycle syncing because this is a really, really big part of the element of remembering our bodies as they are, allowing our bodies to experience the cycles that they go through. So we are cyclically moved by our hormones. We are like the moon. We are changing every day hormonally. And this is a part of our lives that have been shoved away, that has been shamed, that a lot of us have trauma around. A lot of us don't understand. We haven't learned about it. There's kind of this resentment towards it, even. Which is this very real and raw part of being a woman. Many of us have just wanted it to go away, or even taken hormones to make it go away. And it's shunning this very powerful and real aspect of being in a woman's body. So I'm curious, those of you who are watching, how many of you feel like you learned about your menstrual cycle in a way that was empowering? Type a yes or a no or a Y or an N. Let me know. Did you learn about your cycle in a way that feels empowering for you in your life? Most of us did not. Most of us didn't learn the real wisdom existing within each week and the hormonal science. There is so much for us to learn and remember about ourselves in our cycle wisdom. And to know that we are this beautifully moving, incredibly inconsistent, wonderfully feeling, radiant, luscious being that is moving through these phases of shadow and light. We're moving through the phases of deeply, deeply feeling, letting go, having these times of feeling deeper into our raw, vulnerable selves, and times of incredible radiance and power when we're ovulating. And we move through this cycle month after month after month after month. And to remember the element of the fact that there is no mistake in our design. Absolutely. There is a wisdom and a power within our cycles that, when learned about, when supported, when when we see that there is these gifts of being a feeling, sensitive human being, even though our society, our culture has made no room for that, that there is a wisdom there that has been lost as we shove this part of ourselves aside, and a lot of dis-ease that has come up in our bodies and our emotions and our minds because we have shoved this part of ourselves aside. So for many, many thousands of years, women were honored in their time of their cycle. They were seen as moving into a deeper time of wisdom during this period. It wasn't shamed, and they didn't go away or be put us to the side because they were dirty. They gathered away intentionally in moon huts, in what was called the red tents. In different cultures all across the world, the women would go to the side during this very powerful time and bleed together and feel and tune into the wisdom of this time. And the cultures, or the communities, their communities around them recognized this as being an opportunity for the wisdom to come through for the village, for the town, for the wisdom to come through the women. And that is an element of deeply remembering this part of ourselves that has been buried. That there is such wisdom that we carry in our intuition, in our feeling. And then there's so much more about our cycles, so much more in the science, in what's really going on with our hormones. It's fascinating. So that's a big part of my passion, is sharing with women about their cycles. So cycle syncing, getting in touch with who we are as cyclical, tracking that, designing our lives around that, remembering our cycles are a gift, even though they can be really, really hard in this society, in this culture. When we learn how to work with them, we become more empowered, and it is easier for us to be in the cycle because we know it, because we're remembering our power there, because we're giving ourselves the space to be all of it and learning how to work with it in a powerful, empowered way, where we're not looking back and feeling like, what just happened to me? We're in tune with the movement of ourselves. And this is a big part of my work. So cycle syncing, womb awake. Womb awake is the art of reconnecting with our womb space, remembering this very powerful and potent part of our bodies that most of us have been very disconnected from. There's this element of our bodies in our womb space, that place 2 inches below our belly button, where many of us don't even connect with or don't feel, except if we're cramping, we feel it, or if we're feeling pleasure, if we're sexually intimate, we feel it. Through birth, pregnancy, we definitely connect there. But it is this incredibly central ground to our place of power and pleasure within ourselves as women. It's this place that we carry every day in between our hips, and it's a portal to our creativity. It's a portal to our expression. It's a portal to awakening more pleasure day to day in our lives. And working to remember this, working to reconnect with this space, the womb space, through embodied meditation, through breath, through the guidance of learning how to link in with this space. And remember, this is our ground. This is our sovereignty. This is our throne as women. And it is time that we bring ourselves back there. And when we are reconnected there, we are awakening a different level of response ability, our ability to respond to the moment. We are coming from a deeper place of our own power, our own ground, our sovereignty, our calm, our clarity about boundaries. It awakens a different sense of being in our bodies. And that it's a journey of awakening. It's a journey of reconnection. It's a journey of healing. Because so many of us do carry so much in these places also from our traumas, from sexual traumas, from ancestral traumas. So remembering that this place is a holy ground for us to connect into. As we're moving around the wheel, pleasure and desire. So we as women absolutely thrive in our creativity, in our expression, in our experience of living, in our magnetism, in this beautiful, radiant femininity that we have when we are in our pleasure. We have been so trained out of pleasure. We have been guilted for feeling like we want to take care of ourselves. We have so much guilt around self-care. Raise your hand if you feel like you feel guilty for taking care of yourself. That there's still times where even when you know you're on a path of taking care of yourselves, it comes always on the last of our to-do lists. Raise your hand in the comments. Are you one of those women, like so many of us, that put ourselves last? And because of this sacrificing, we're not resourced. We are not feeling like we have the energy that's radiating out. We don't feel like we have the vitality, the magnetism, the energy of being in that open flow in our pleasure like we deserve. When we're not resourcing ourselves, then we're tapped. We're not in our pleasure. When we're not in our pleasure, we're not creative in our minds in the same way. We're just surviving. We're trying to make it day to day, moment to moment. But when we learn how to bring pleasure back into our lives, it can be a very simple element, a very easy way of tweaking the way that we look at things and allowing them to be self-care. Self-care brings pleasure. And we need to remember that this is a huge part of who we are as sensual, beautiful, feminine beings. We thrive in pleasure. And remembering it to bring it back into our day-to-day lives. Remembering that we are worthy, absolutely, of being first on the list. It's okay that we're first on the list. We are the originators of everything we're giving. We need to be resourced. Moving into desire and awakening the desire within ourselves. What do we even want? We haven't been taught to ask ourselves what we want. And many of us has lost even the knowing of what it is that it really feels good for me in my life and anymore. What feels good? I don't even have a connection to that anymore. And when we do, it can be very hard to place those things in our day because we have so many other things to do. Even I struggle with that, and I've been in this practice for a long time. There's times I got to really push myself out the door to go for that walk because I should be doing something else. I should be. So remembering pleasure, remembering desire, and remembering that we are instruments of pleasure in so many ways. And when we're in our pleasure, we are magnetic, and the universe moves through us when we are in our pleasure. And we are able to do what we do from our being, from a state of being in pleasure. And moving around the wheel, going down to sacred ground and embodiment. So when we're embodied as women, when we're in our presence, then we're sensual. When we're sensual, we're feeling more pleasure. So you see, all of these are working together. And an element of our sacred ground and remembering our sacred ground is creating time for ourselves in the pause, finding that sacred ground within ourselves to feel ourselves in the pause, in the non-doing. This can be done through simple ritual. It can be done through taking a walk by ourselves and breathing. But finding the time to create space for embodied presence in a very focused way, and calling in that sacred ground within ourselves to find who we are in that place, who that sacred, divine, feminine essence is within each of ourselves. I'd love to know from you in the comments, do you feel a connection with your sacred feminine already? Yes or no? Do you feel that sacred ground within yourself? It's in all of us, and I'm pretty sure each of us has a glimpse of that. And to be able to bring that into our daily lives, into our daily doings, and ground that into, remember that this is an incredibly important part of our feminine power and our radiance, to be grounded and connected into that sacred within ourselves. And that looks different for each of us. And then moving around the wheel again to feelings and intuition. So we are fierce feelers. We are sensitive for a reason. There is purpose behind our emotions. We are the carriers of this wisdom. So many of us have had to push our feelings aside to keep up, push our feelings aside to be successful in a world that is linear. You know, those of us that have moved into trying to engage in careers and climb the ladders and be equal to men in the workplace, absolutely have had to shove our emotions aside to keep showing up. We're expected to be the same every day. And, you know, even in our partnerships, in our life around us, in the culture, being emotional is erratic and it's too much and it's inconsistent and, you know, it's gotten a bad rap. And because of that, so many of us have forgotten the power of our feelings. And without the wisdom, we're either like super overwhelmed by them or we just shut them off because it's too much and we don't know how to navigate our lives with being a feeling human being. So to remember that our feelings are an incredible element of our superpower as women. It is a gift that we have to bring and to give to the culture, to the people around us. Now, that doesn't mean splatting your emotions everywhere. And it doesn't mean getting swept up in emotions and creating all the stories and being dramatic. There's a way to be in tune with our emotions, to sit with our feelings in that raw space of feeling, to inquire about the feelings, to work with healing what's coming up, to be our own healer. There's a way to feel the raw expression of what we feel, and especially as cyclical beings, we are designed in our pre-bleed week to be deeply feeling. We are designed by our hormones to feel. There's no accident in that. There's incredible wisdom. And to be able to remember that and learn how to be with our feelings without creating the stories, without letting them sweep us away, without hiding them and then having them, surface in our bodies. This is an incredible aspect of remembering our human woman embodied wisdom. And intuition comes from there when we are in tune with our feeling, when we're in tune with our bodies, when we are in a state of open flow and allowing the universe to move through us. In our bellies, in our wombs, we have that gut feeling. We are very intuitive when we allow ourselves to listen, to remember that this is a part of our power, to remember we're not crazy, to remember we're not insane or we're not too emotional, to remember this as our wisdom. And all four of these elements on this wheel, they work together, they feed one another. They're interwoven into this beautiful tapestry of being woman. And remembering that we are all of this. Underneath all of the have tos, should be's, don't do that, be quiet, you're too much, you're inconsistent, you're crazy. How many of us have heard those things about ourselves in our lives and have carried that with us and dimmed our light over and over? Dimmed our fire, dimmed our wild, raw expression and feeling and sovereignty as queen, as wild woman, as feminine. I want to know, let me know in the comments, have you taken on voices throughout your life from the culture, from your job, from your partners, from your family, that have shrunk you down and shaped you into something that you are absolutely ready to break free from? Give me a yes in the comments. Are you absolutely ready to break free from these elements that we have been shrunken by, and to remember the power that you are? Claim it. Claim it now. Yes, 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 I absolutely am. Yes, Angelique. And this is a practice. It's a day-to-day living, embodied practice of transformation and unveiling and shedding layer upon layer upon layer. And it is beautiful and raw and real. It's the work that I do. It's the work that I share with women. And I'm so, so happy to have you here. So I know, Angelique, you've been commenting and I haven't been, but I will read them. I will read them after. As I know I'm going over, because I always do, I wanted to share a little bit more with you now that we've gone through the wheel. So all of these elements to the feminine pillars that I've shared here in this signature process that I work with in my work in guiding women through and teaching about. Each of these are a thread in this beautiful interwoven delicious tapestry that you are, that I am, that each of us is as a woman. So I wanted to share with you a little bit today also about some her story. So we have been raised in his story. History. Isn't that funny that his story, history is spelled his story? Because that's what it is. It's his story. It's not our story. It's not her story. So I wanted to share with you today a little bit of her story. So in college, starting way back then, I got very fascinated by the divine feminine and actually studied in college different cultures of the goddess in prehistory and pre-written into history, starting way back in the Paleolithic period and into the Neolithic period and then into written word. So starting way back Paleolithic, which is like 25,000 years ago, I think, maybe even more. There have been many, 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 many archaeological findings of beautiful statuettes of women, of goddesses, with full breasts and full round bellies. And these were the expressions of these people's relationship with the divine feminine. And she was honored. She was honored. There was paintings of her in cave walls, there's carvings, and this began at the beginning of human expression, which at that time was in art. And art is functional art, but art. So these divine little statuettes of this overflowing, abundant feminine, revered, honored for the mystery of her creative powers, for the nourishing of her bodies, for the creativity of her body, the full breasts full of nourishment. And moons, images with her with crescent moons with notches on them to track time and track the moon cycles. So there was these cultures starting way back when that were in a connection with divine feminine and revered this energy in life, in the universe, and saw its power. And that was continued for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. My thesis was tracking this divine feminine through time, up until the Bible, actually. And so through the Neolithic period, when they started planting and settling down humans, and this realization that that was also a big part of in tune with the cycles of the seasons and the female. And the female being representation of fertility, which was then connected to the land and the food they ate. And this variety of archetypes that this divine feminine took in a place of honor, where the societies were matrilineal. The women were the ones having children, so the children were not tracked by the man as they are now, patrilineal societies, where, women generally take the male's last name. There's that ownership. They were tracked by the woman, so things were passed down through the women line. Women owned things. Women were independent. And how that played out in life. Women were spiritual leaders. They were priestesses. They held the magic and the wisdom of these places that we were talking about in the wheel. They were revered for these and encouraged and seen as wise and powerful in these places. And we trace this through the art, and then it goes into the written word and mythos. And through myth, the goddess actually slowly, the archetypes of the goddess slowly start shifting as more male dominated sky god related tribes came into the places where the goddess cultures thrived and took over. And that's been happening for, over the last 3 to 5,000 years, 6,000 years. And this decline of their power, where then they ended up, the myths are telling these tales, where then, they disappeared or they became the property of the gods in the myths. And then women couldn't own, women weren't owning their own property anymore. Women could not be financially independent. Everything was traced through the male. Patriarchy came in. And that's been the dominant for about 6,000 years now. But for thousands and thousands and thousands of years before that, that is not what was going on, sister. So there is a whole lot of remembering to do from way, way, way back. That this is also in our ancestral line. This is also in the lineage of our bodies and beings. These thousands and thousands and thousands of years where the goddess cultures were revering the wisdom of the woman, wisdom of the feminine. And that feels really, really great to know. That it was for a very long time, it was different, and it can be different. And that doesn't mean, matriarchy and we're taking over as women. It means that each side has a place and is honored for their innate and unique wisdom. Because we have both men and women, and we have masculine and feminine within each of us as well. So it's the balance. And right now, for the balance, women need to reclaim. And that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow. Reclaiming this feminine power in our lives. So I'm going to be dropping a couple things. I'll be dropping some journal questions, and I will also bring a couple of pictures in of these statuettes I'm speaking of. There's so many. And if you want to look them up or you would like to learn more about that, just let me know in the comments. I will happily share more and talk to you more about it and link you to some good books. There is a whole lot of her story before history began. And it's really important for us to know that and remember. There's remembering in all these different ways. There's remembering from that lineage of a different time that existed. And there's remembering who we really are underneath all of the shoulds, have to's, must do, should do. And then there's the remembering of our pillars here and how these pillars create the powerful matrix and tapestry of being woman. So again, just taking your hand, putting it on your heart and on your womb. And breathing all of this in. Into your own space of remembering right now, wherever that is for you. Whatever that embodied breath is. And a little touch into what does she feel like right now. All right, sisters. Thanks for staying a little longer. I'll try to make it shorter tomorrow. I just have so much to share. And yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for all of you who are watching the replay, and love to each of you. Bye-bye.